All right. Good evening, folks. It is 7:03, and we got probably a packed evening of content tonight, so we're going to get started here. For those of you in the back, if you want to grab some seats, there's still quite a bit of seats available up front here, so grab a seat wherever you can make yourself comfortable. Thanks for coming out on a rainy evening, kind of a nice springtime rain today, which is great. But yeah, most of you guys know me, but for those of you that don't, my name is Jake Byler. I'm your host for the meeting. I've been a part of this group for a good number of years, and it's just a fun time getting together with growth-oriented people, looking to learn, looking to grow, and looking to connect with each other, looking to get inspired. And as you know, we bring in a pretty broad range of speakers and topics. And you've heard me say this many times, and I'll keep saying it. This type of gathering is one of the single biggest things that I could point to that has helped me in my business and investing journey. Just getting around people. Many times it's actually not even so much about the content, about the education, as it is just the inspiration and connection. So you guys are a part of that, just getting together here. So thank you for choosing to come out. These meetings are primarily paid for by sponsors, and our sponsors for 2025 are, we have 6 of them. Sam Glick from Red Box Dumpsters. We heard briefly from Sam at the last meeting. Chet Lapp with Providence Abstracting Company. Ben Yoesh, he's a local realtor. One of his team is going to be sharing briefly on a market update here. Chris Good. Jeff Moeller does some private lending. Joe Liofsky, Compass Property Management. He's the founder of this group. And Sammy Stolzfus, Mill Run Storage. Sammy is also one of our new sponsors for this year. And Sammy is going to come up and tell us a little bit about what they do. You come on up, Sammy. And so they do some storage units, and he's going to show you some slides and show you what they have to offer. So if you press, I think that button, that'll get you to your slides.
This one's turned on.
What's that?
It's turned on.
Yeah, you're good.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Sammy Stolzfus, Mill Run Storage. Thanks, Jake, for giving me a couple minutes here. So what we do is portable storage units, as you can tell in those pictures. We do sales and rentals. For rentals is mainly job sites. Somebody's moving, they need a place to put their stuff. Right now I have quite a few out. Somebody's doing a kitchen renovation, just need a place to put some stuff. So that can relate over into, if you're doing a flip job, need a place to put some stuff, we'll deliver it to you, store your stuff in there. Once the project's done, we'll come out, pick it up again. Basically, it goes hand in hand with a dumpster. I usually tell guys, you rent a dumpster, put your trash in, you rent a storage unit to put your good stuff in. So that lot there is a lot that I'm working on down in Philly, providing him those. He's got 8 there. We just delivered the last 2 last week, and he's got room for 2 more. So far, he's got 6 of them filled up. The first one was delivered back in November or December. So there you see the ROI on that already. So it can really work for investors as well on our sales side of things, where you can, if you have a small corner, let's say even an apartment building, 2 parking spaces, you can put 2 units in there and make a little extra money there. There is some regulations on it. A lot of people just do it under the radar and just say, well, it's for the tenants. And as long as you don't have too much traffic in and out, you'll probably be all right. That one there, that's also a lot that I'm filling. That one's down in Philly. He's looking to put, I think, around 30 units on that one. So he's just getting started. Hopefully, by the end of the year, he's hoping to have it all filled up. That's a 12 by 30. That'd be a little larger unit. What I usually recommend there is, if somebody has a larger lot and doesn't want the look of individual buildings, you can go with that, a little more cleaned up. There, that one is a small apartment building in Lebanon City. So right in front of those doors, there's actually an alley, and he said, you know what? I got a little bit of, it was, kind of grown up there. Clean it up, spread some stone, put the units there, started renting them out right away. So, that's the opportunities that you guys can have as well. Now, another thing that we offer is office buildings. They're very similar to what our storage units are. It's just finished out, with windows and a small door. And then the interior, we finish out. Basically, all you need to do is hook it up to electric. You got an office. That building there particularly went to like a small car dealership in Reading. Just needed an extra space for his secretary a couple days a week. So we put it on the back side of the building. He took care of that, and he alleviated a lot of room on the inside. So yeah, that's pretty much what we have. I'll be around a little bit after the meeting if anybody has any questions. One more thing there. Actually, there was one that we did for a school. That was a 3-unit office. So 3 individual units or individual offices. They're just getting 2 full inside. So they got an office building, set it right outside. It's right there. That actually, that's Abner Blanks. Did you ever see his? Yeah. So some of you guys might know Abner Blank. He's on the board here. Him and one of his brother-in-laws have a property up in Shenandoah, PA. They had one side was lined with storage units. Now he's lining the other side. Those were the first 2 we had delivered for him. We just delivered 2 more for him here about 3 weeks ago. So he's got that all filled up, hopefully making money on that. Now, another thing that we've been doing I kind of started this quite some time ago, doing garden tilling in springtime. So anybody has a garden that they want tilled up this spring, let us know. We're going to be starting to think of that here in the next couple weeks. So take my number, let me know.
One question for you.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's more people wondering the same thing that I am. So you have quite a few different sizes of storage units there. But tell us a little bit about ballpark prices for your average sizes, if there is such a thing.
So a ballpark number is in between. I mean, it varies by sizes, of course, but I say most of them are in the $28 per square foot, which is pretty decent for storage. I know some guys have told me, for something that you build on site, you're probably looking at $35, $40 a square foot. I do have a website as well, so I have a price list on there. If you have any questions on sizes and pricing, check out the website. We do also build any size you want. So, if you have something in particular, small corner, that it just takes a certain size, we'll get that for you as well. Thanks, Jake.
Thanks for that. Sounds like a nice little option for rental property if you have a nice place to park it. Next up, Chris Good is going to share a brief market update with us. Chris is, like I said, he's a friend of mine, local realtor, and there's always something to talk about in the real estate market. So Chris is going to share just briefly on something relating to real estate.
All right, thanks, Jake. It's been a little bit since I was up here. I thought it'd be interesting to look at the 2024 numbers and compare it to 23. So pretty self-explanatory here, but the average sold price went up about 20,000 compared to last year. The units sold dropped slightly, but the sold volume you'll probably find interesting. We're up about 80 million? Am I looking at that right? Yeah. So 1.6 billion last year, and a little over 1.7 in 23, a little over 1.7 in 24. So I thought that was interesting. One of the questions I often get as a realtor is, when is this market going to slow down? Right? Most of you know that we've been in a crazy market for quite a while. So there's some folks that made the choice to sit on the sidelines and just kind of wait for things to cool down. If that is you, maybe just something to think about. The millennial generation is just getting into the home buying age. Just a fun side note, the average age of a first-time home buyer just hit the age of 38. So that's fairly old, I would say. Anyway, the millennial generation is just starting to hit those ages, and that is also the largest generation in U.S. history. So there's a lot of demand coming the next few years. So I personally don't see the market getting buyer-friendly anytime soon. Now the baby boomers will be selling off. That'll help balance it a little bit. But I'm not a prophet, but I personally think we might see above average home appreciation over the next 5-10 years or so. So whatever you want to do with that, there's a little update for you or prediction for you.
Follow-up question for you as well. So you see the units sold there. So we're talking Lancaster County single-family homes, right? So 4,700 in 2024 versus a very similar number, but slightly down in 2024. I had heard from somewhere that the home sales in 2024 were the lowest that they've been for like 30 years, 25, 30 years. Now, I don't know if that was national. Did you hear that statistic at all? Yeah, nationally, we got a 30-year low in number of transactions. That's pretty wild. And yeah, we're still seeing it here, low inventory, not quite as low as it had been, but. So thank you for that, Chris. We will, that's always interesting to just look at a snapshot of the market. All right, well, we're going to go into our main topic and presentation for the evening. If you have read the emails or heard the announcements, you know that a friend of mine by the name of Jim Smucker is in town. Jim currently lives in Ohio, and he is the president and CEO of a large company out there, Keim, is it Keim Lumber or just Keim, whatever? Yep. I first got to know Jim probably 15 years ago around the beginning stages of the Bird in Hand Half Marathon. So while he was still in the area, he was the chairman of of the Half Marathon board for quite a few years, and we were run together and helped do some things around race organization together. So got to know Jim very well. Always appreciated him, not only as a friend and as a runner, but as a business person. And so fast forward to now, he had him and his wife had moved down to where's the MU? Down in Harrisonburg, Virginia. Yeah. So you were down there for a number of years, and then out to Ohio, where they're at now. And but he still comes. Have you missed any half marathon events? So he's always there, and we're usually at the finish line together and chatting. And so last September at the race, we started chatting, and he knew from seeing him on Facebook about the meetings that we do here. So we started talking about that, and I had actually probably over a year ago, I was, I'm always thinking of different speakers and topics for this group. So I had thought about Jim, and then we were chatting at the finish line of the half marathon last fall. We started talking about this, and I asked him if he would be interested in speaking sometime. He's like, sure, I'd be happy to do that. So made a note of it, and we communicated, and got it on the calendar, and here we are. But I'm gonna read you Jim's bio just to kind of put some stuff in the context here. So a lot of what we talk about in this room has something to do with real estate, right? Real estate, business, or something. Jim's presentation is not so much going to be about real estate, I don't think, but more around business and just life in general, life and leadership lessons, as you saw on the screen there earlier. While I think the specific real estate topics are important, last week we dove into the whole thing of like a lot of debt, no debt, and those specific topics. I personally think that topics like this are just as important, because no matter what kind of business you're in, if you're, you're dealing with people, you're around a lot of people, and how you deal with people and how you communicate. I've heard a statistic, and I don't disagree with it, that your success or lack thereof in any business is going to determine 90% on your ability to deal with people, and maybe only 10% in specific product knowledge. And I believe that's true. So I'm going to read Jim's bio here, and then just as I'm reading this, think about the positions that he's been in that involved working with people, and in some cases, a lot of people. So he's currently the CEO and president of Keim, a 650 employee family business in Ohio. The company operates businesses in retail, manufacturing, and lumber distribution. He previously served as a vice president and academic dean at Eastern Mennonite University. Prior to his work there, he served for 27 years as a partner and president of the Bird and Hand Corporation. That's the Bird and Hand restaurant, Bird and Hand Hotel up there along 340 that we're probably all familiar with. They're a hospitality management company in Lancaster. He's a past chair of the Lancaster Chamber of Commerce and Pennsylvania Dutch Convention and Visitors Bureau. He has served on a number of for-profit and non-profit boards, one of them being the Half Marathon. Coached high school basketball and baseball for over 14 years. In his spare time, he enjoys reading, training for, and running ultramarathons and hanging out with his grandchildren, which I think is what he was doing just before he came here today. And he lives in Berlin, Ohio, near Berlin, Ohio, with his wife, Anna. So I took a quick look at Jim's presentation, but I really don't know how he's going to frame the presentation, but I think it's going to be a lot of back and forth with running and with business. And some of you guys heard me say this last month. Some of you guys don't even know there is such a thing, but Jim has run quite a few what we call ultra marathons. By definition, a marathon is 26.2 miles, right? Anything over that is what people call an ultra marathon. So if you're running another distance that's pretty popular is a 50 kilometers, so that's 31 miles, so that's an ultra marathon. But Jim has run quite a few races of 100 miles in distance. I actually ran one with him back in 2014. I have not run one since. I think Jim has run one every year since that. But I'm really anxious to hear his presentation, because even as with the running that I've done in the past, I have seen a lot of parallels between running and business, just, whether it's the challenges you come up to, whatever. So I'm really excited to see what he has to share with us tonight. So without further ado, would you please help me welcome Jim Smucker?
Thanks, Dave. Is my mic working? Sound good? You can hear me? Great. Thanks so much, Jake. I was hoping you remembered that time we ran together for almost 100 miles. I think at the end you went ahead of me, but I'm a lot older than you are, so that was allowed. So as Jake said, I want to share some lessons for you from running ultramarathons that apply to life and business. Every year I try and do a 100-mile race, and also my brother and I go to a national park somewhere out west and run, and now we're taking my daughter along and my nephew and my other niece now, so we're kind of making it a family thing. This first picture here is me running. This is Mount Rainier right back here. So my brother and I did a loop. It's called the Wonderland Trail, which is a 84-mile trail, I think, around Mount Rainier. So just lots of fun times and special times together with family and with running. The key points for this evening. First of all, the seeds of the opposite are planted in the present. And what I've learned in ultramarathoning is whatever you're feeling at the moment, the opposite is for sure coming. And how does that apply to business? Have long-term goals, but execute in the moment. Number 3, welcome suffering in life and business. It's the only way we learn. Number 4, the situation, no matter how difficult, doesn't need to be different. We just need to see it differently, again, in life and in business. And then finally, success is out there beyond our self-imposed limits. Our mind limits us in so many ways. Our body will go much further than our mind if we allow it to. This is me throwing up at a 66 miles of a 100-mile race. My daughter was laughing taking this picture, and she later added some artwork there to explain what I was doing. So the seeds of the opposite are planted in the present, but the opposite is not inevitable. So I'm running a race called the Bull Run 50-mile race many years ago. Actually, it was a couple months before Jake and I ran the 100-mile together. I get to about mile 31. And in ultra running, we have what's called a bonk, when you have a sudden loss of energy. And I've experienced this a number of times, and it's really kind of a helpless feeling. You just run out of energy. I wasn't getting enough food in me. It was a very hot day. We're in the mountains. And all of a sudden, I don't have energy. So it's about a mile and a half to the next aid station. So I walk into the next aid station. I sit there for almost an hour with liquids coming out of both ends, kind of like what was going on here, but also the other end. And it's demoralizing because all these people are passing you by. And I go up to the aid station captain. This is out in the mountains of Virginia. I go up to the aid station captain and I say, I got to drop. I have no energy left. And he says, sorry, but you can't drop here. We're out in the middle of nowhere. No one can take you to the finish line. So as I said, I sat there for almost an hour. After a while, I get up. I walk to about 5 miles to the next aid station. I go up to the aid station captain there and say, I got to drop. You know, I'm done. And some guy who I never met before comes up behind me and says, he's from Georgia, he says, y'all ain't dropping. I'm going to kick your butt to the finish line. So I'm like, all right, I'll do that. So I grab a half a cup of Mountain Dew and a handful of gummy bears. I walk out of the aid station, eat the gummy bears, drink the Mountain Dew, and about a half mile out of the aid station, all of a sudden my energy comes back. And I felt bad because I beat him by about a mile to the finish line. It's an amazing thing what can happen and what our bodies can do. And it's the same as in life and in business. Whatever we're feeling at the moment, the opposite may be coming. As I say here, it's not inevitable. So what are some of the things we can do? I want to show you a video now of it's kind of a folk tale of how we can kind of get lost in our mission, in our business, or in life.
There is an old folk tale about a dangerous seacoast where shipwrecks often occurred. On that coast was a little life-saving hut, very crude and with only one boat. However, there were a few devoted members who gave themselves day and night at the risk of their own lives to rescue those who had been shipwrecked. Soon this little station became famous because so many were saved. Others wanted to become associated with this very famous enterprise and gave time and money and effort to buy new boats and to train more crews. After a while, some members were unhappy with such a poorly equipped center, so they enlarged the building and put in better furniture. The life-saving station became a popular gathering place and members used it as a club. As time went on, fewer members were interested in the dangerous life-saving missions and instead hired crews to do the work. However, in respect for the initial purpose of the club, life-saving images were prominent in the decorations, and there was even a symbolic lifeboat in the room where they had initiations. About this time, there was a large shipwreck. The hired crews brought in the cold, half-drowned, and dirty people, and the club was trashed. As a result, the property committee had a shower house built outside where the future victims could be cleaned up. A split developed among the members at the next meeting. Most of them wanted to stop the life-saving activities that were a hindrance to their social life. Some members insisted that life-saving was their priority. The majority prevailed, and the minority was told they could begin their own life-saving station down the coast. They did. As the years went by, the new station went through exactly the same changes as the old. It evolved into a club, and yet another life-saving station was created. History repeated itself, and after a number of years on that coast, visitors could find a number of exclusive clubs along the shore. Shipwrecks were still frequent, but most of the victims drowned. One day, a newcomer came to the community and began to ask questions about the mission of the life stations. Why do you wait in your plush rescue stations for ships to crash? Wouldn't it be better, he suggested, to build a lighthouse to warn the ships away from the dangerous rocks? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. The old-timers laughed. A lighthouse would be very expensive, and there was no evidence that a lighthouse would do any good. Besides, that is not what we do, they exclaimed. There will always be shipwrecks, and so we must be prepared to rescue the victims. The story of the life-saving station is a metaphor for the changes that businesses of all shapes and sizes experience. It is a dramatic portrayal of the need for businesses to stay focused on their mission, to be both maintainers and growers, to grow in ways that keep the feeling small as it grows larger, and to lead with a humble spirit.
So we're going to cover some of these points as we go through this, but you can see how they lost focus and how the seeds of the opposite was kind of planted in their arrogance and in their wanting to just have a social time instead of their original mission of being life-saving folks. I want to spend a little time with something called the product or the organizational life cycle curve, which is something that I think about every day. If we're not coming to work every day just a little bit nervous about someone else going to eat our lunch today, we're not thinking right. I'm not saying we should be fearful, but we want to be a little nervous. So a life cycle curve, this can apply to a product, to an organization. It's what happens to us. It's what happens to animals. You're born, whether you're a person or an organization, you grow. Teenage years, you know, eventually you get up to maturity. I'm 63, so that's probably about where I'm at. And then you start to go down the other side and eventually die. So organizations follow a similar pattern as do products. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. At each stage on the curve, there are different problems that need to be solved. So you want to understand where you're at as an organization, as a business, or you want to understand where your products are at to know how you respond. The key here is, and I'll explain this in a minute, is you want to grow, you want to start new curves while you're still growing. Too many people wait until they start going down the other side until they start paying attention to what's going on. A great story is Steve Jobs and the creation of the Apple iPhone. So 2007, anybody remember what Apple's big product was in 2000? Their most popular product in 2005, 2006. Does anybody remember what that might have been? iPod. Exactly. It was the iPod, a music player about the size of an iPhone. Okay, so 2006-07, Jobs is developing the iPhone. And he says, we're going to put music in this iPhone. And one of his engineers says, well, but the iPod, you're going to destroy the iPod. That's our most popular product. And Jobs says, yes, we're going to make it obsolete before our competition does. That's amazing for someone to say, we're going to make our best-selling product obsolete before someone else does. That's Jobs here at point A when things are going really well, saying we're going to create something different. Now I want to just walk through a typical business and the stages it goes through. So here again, you have startup, entrepreneur, somebody who has an idea, very gifted in that. And at each stage here, you need different gifts in your business. And to me, this is one of the great parts about a family business. So I'm in a fourth-generation family business that's been around for 113 years. And each generation has come along and added to the knowledge and has had different gifts along this curve that has helped make Keim successful. So in the startup phase, again, it's very entrepreneurial. You're trying to survive. I've started up several businesses. Many of you have started up businesses. You know what this is like. Lots of hours, you know, lots of you're nervous time. You're not sure if this is going to be successful, et cetera. Then we move to the next stage, which is more, we just want sales. We're just trying to generate sales to survive. at this stage, it's like an infant, getting into everything, anything to bring sales in. You don't plan and organize as much. You don't have time for that. You're just trying to get to recognize opportunities. Here you think sales equals success. You don't think much about profit margins as you do just getting sales. When we move to the next stage now, we have to learn how to create profits out of sales. Here is where a lot of entrepreneurs get into trouble, because an entrepreneurial mindset and a management mindset are very different things. And a lot of people don't have the same skill sets. I will tell you at Keim, we are right in this area right here. We are a successful company, we're a profitable company, but sales is what everybody talks about. And we're trying to shift that to more of a profit orientation. How do we make better profit margins out of what we have? So understand again, this is where a lot of entrepreneurs get into trouble. If we can't see what our gifts are as an entrepreneur and what we don't have in terms of gifts, and bring other people along, the next generation or whoever, that might get us into trouble. So at Keim, I'm the first non-family president of the company. The fourth generation president recognized that he didn't have the gifts to lead Keim to this next stage of profits. And so he says, as the owner, I kind of looked and said, I wouldn't hire myself at this time in the period of the company. I really admire him for that. It takes a lot of courage for him to do that. And so he brought me in, and I brought in 3 or 4 additional management folks with lots of experience, and we're trying to work at that profit piece. If you get to this stage and your profit margins start to shrink, that should be your first sign that you're in decline or your product is in decline. When your profit margins start to shrink, and then you start going down this curve, into decline, and if you're not careful, you eventually come down into death. What changes in decline, in a growing company, problems are seen as opportunities. In a dying company, opportunities are seen as problems. You don't have the time, or you're frustrated, or you see opportunities and you're in decline, you don't have as much capital to invest, things aren't going as well, and they become opportunities. For the life-saving stations, the video, they lost their entrepreneurial mindset. And the thought of building a lighthouse did not make sense to them. That was the opportunity. That could have saved many, many lives, but they couldn't see it because they were going into decline down the other end. The paradox of success is that what got you where you are won't keep you there. And this is the beauty of family businesses, because the next generation usually has a different vision. If the first generation doesn't step aside to allow the next generation to come along and bring their own vision in, you see that's where a lot of companies start to fail, a lot of family businesses. What you want to do is create new products or new businesses while you're still doing really well, while you're still very profitable here at point A. And that's the time when people say, well, why? Why do we have to change? So you want to change before it feels like you should change, like Steve Jobs did. Okay? Top-selling product, we're going to change it. The area here that I have, this is confusion to people. Employees might say, why are we changing? Just like the engineer said to Steve, well, why are we getting rid of that product? It's confusing because things are really going well. But we have to have the foresight as entrepreneurs to understand the product that got us to where we are isn't going to keep us there long term, because someone's going to come in and have our lunch. Can't emphasize this point enough. Many companies wait until point B, when they're in decline, and now you don't have as much capital. Things aren't going as well. You're investing, you have to change out of weakness versus changing out of strength. That's why I say I think of this all the time, because things are going pretty well at Keim, and that scares me. What am I missing? What are we missing as a business community? What you want is this. Oh, I want to mention this yet. Disruption in the external environment compresses time. So we've got growth here, we got time here. So a typical product life cycle curve, say, is like this. When you're in disruptive times, that shrinks, and change happens more quickly. In my lifetime, I'm old enough to remember the gas, 1973 and 1979, the shortage of gas were significant crisis, and we had a really bad economy in the early 70s. 9/11 was a period of change. The Great Recession, 2008 and 2009, COVID, and I'm telling you now is one of these times. There is chaos. I'm in the lumber industry, and we just found out yesterday we get 30% of our lumber from Canada, 70% of our framing lumber from Canada, and there's tariffs going in, and this morning we got all kinds of word of all kinds of price increases coming. This is a time of chaos. In times like these, things really change quickly. This curve shrinks. You understand what I'm saying? Okay? And folks who sit around and wait and wait and wait and things are going to stay the same as they are, they're going to be the ones that are going to be pretty disappointed. So, you know, it's like, what is going to, I think every day we deliver a lot of sticks to a lot of contractors. We have about 2,000 contractors that are customers. What's going to change? With a number of things happening right now in the home building industry, really hasn't changed how you build a home for the last, 70, 80 years. It's pretty much the same way. Home building industry, to me, is the last industry that technology hasn't really largely touched. And I think that's about to change, and that scares me. What's coming? What's next? What is going to make it so that people don't get sticks delivered to job sites is something I think about a lot. Does that make sense? Does this, like this curve, seeds of the opposite planted in the present. If you're sloppy here, if you get arrogant here and think things are always going to be this way, things are always going to be going on up on that curve, that's the seeds of your downfall. So you always want to be a little nervous and thinking about what's coming. One last story on this point, and this is a great story of a family business, a good friend of mine, $2.5 billion company. $1.5 billion, he had two businesses. $1.5 billion was his dad's business that he started, the family legacy business. And he decides to sell that business. His dad wasn't very happy with him, but he was in control. Margins were starting to shrink. He sells that business, and now he's got a $1 billion company, and guess what? He's making more profits with that $1 billion company than he was with the $2.5 billion company. That's pretty fascinating. He takes that $1.5 billion that he sold, he goes out and buys a new company in this area of the curve. Well, let me go to this one. He goes out and buys a new company that was coming up the curve, and now he's back to a $2.5 billion company, and both are thriving, and he's making money like crazy. So he had the discipline and he had the confidence to sell their legacy company because he just had a feeling like its prime time was over. And today he is really doing well. So we think of 5 things at Keim I'm thinking of in terms of strategy going forward to maintain a resilient organization. Supporting the personal and professional development of coworkers and building talent. Talent is our advantage today. The quality of our team, having a really strong and talented team. Secondly, we want to grow our witness of being salt and light in the world. We're a faith-based company. We're not ashamed at all to call it that. We want to be a city on a hill. You know, Sermon on the Mount, right out of the Sermon on the Mount. We want to be a city on a hill. Our priority, our noble purpose is to build the kingdom of God through diligent stewardship and abundant generosity. That's number one for us. And so we think that's where we need to be focused. We also want to create and maintain structures and processes that keep decisions and costs close to the customer. For example, a year ago, we had our first ever employee survey. We asked our employees to tell us how we're doing. And they said, you're really doing a lousy job at supporting computers and IT around here. So we could say, well, we got to hire more people in our IT department, right? That's not what we said. We said we're going to hire our IT department out in the different divisions. You hire your own IT departments. pushing the cost out close to the customer rather than bringing it into the overhead of the company. That's an example of what I mean by that. Keep your cost out close where it's near the customer, because that is where it can change much more quickly. We had to hire 3 or 4 more IT people. I guarantee you it wouldn't have been enough. But when we put them out there, they're there working every day, and they see the needs, and they can respond much more quickly. We also want to strengthen our flexibility and be a risk-taking and innovative organization. Continue to take small risks, not big risks that are going to break up the company, but small risks, small projects, things constantly trying to innovate and do things at a small scale, because we know that 9 out of 10 new efforts fail. 9 out of 10 new business efforts fail, or product efforts fail. So you got to keep trying. And then finally, to me, this is very important in these times, in these chaotic times. We want to maintain a very strong balance sheet. We do not want to become over-leveraged. That's, you can argue with me, and that's fine. Maybe it works for you, but I'm telling you, in these times, the next 5 to 6, 7 years, we're going to make sure we're not over-leveraged, because I think there's a lot more chaos coming down the road in the next number of years. Finally, I like this. How can we be the company that would put us out of business? I think about that a lot. Second main point. Have long-term goals, but execute in the moment. So this is Death Valley. I'll explain that in a minute. So I frequently get asked, how do you possibly run 100 miles? My answer is simple. You run it one step at a time. And I don't mean to be trite about that. I mean this literally. You can't get overwhelmed with the enormity of the task. In ultra running and in life, we can get discouraged with the future. When I'm confronted with those feelings, I try and stay in the present. Just like in life or in business, it's important to have big overarching goals, but we reach them one step at a time. Rather than think of 100 miles, I just think of the next aid station, 5 miles down the road. And then when I get there, I think, well, I just got 5 more miles to the next aid station, and then 5 more miles to the next aid station. And all of a sudden, you finish. Every great accomplishment is a series of incremental, small, mundane tasks piled on top of one another to form something amazing. So this was, my brother and I, a number of years ago, decided to run across Death Valley. There's a race there in July when it's 130 degrees, and they literally have to run on that there so their sneakers don't melt. We decided to run it in January when it was more like 40, 50 degrees. But our hotel is right, you can see some buildings right there. That's 15 miles away. How cool is that? Okay? So that's what I mean by one step at a time. If we look up there and it's 15 miles away, and in Death Valley it probably took us 4 hours to get there, you can get really discouraged. Instead of that, you just say, well, let's have fun here. Let's have fun here. Let's have fun in the moment all the way along. Same thing in business and in life. This is our strategic planning model, and I did bring some copies along. I have just a few copies here, and maybe we can send out more if you're interested in this. But we have, I developed this model to really help us think about big picture on this side, all the way through to very small picture, very detailed, everyday thing on this side. So benchmark categories. Our key categories of, we think, a strategy are the employees, God's kingdom, customers, and profitability. Profitability is last, intentionally last. Okay? We think profit is secondary. We put employees and the kingdom first for sure. And employees are actually third. I'm sorry, customers are actually third. And that sounds really backwards, right? But we believe you take care of employees and you work for the kingdom, and the customers will be well taken care of as well. So from that, those 4 big areas, and I just have one here as an example, then we develop a benchmark. So for our customers, we do an annual survey, and we want to have a score of 90% or better on the question, I would encourage others to work here. We feel if others want to work, if our employees encourage others to work for us, they must be happy about what we're doing, right? So that's our big benchmark. Then we have a strategy. We have about 4 or 5 strategies. I don't know why this pointer's not working sometimes, but 4 to 5 strategies here. This one is provide increased opportunities for them to develop personally and professionally. We're really ramping up our professional development for employees. A lot more training opportunities for them to grow. And then this just tells us, well, how are we going to do that? And then these are the day-to-day key performance measures that determine if we're meeting this goal over here. So big picture here, we want employee satisfaction. And then we get down into the detail here. Well, how do we know if they're satisfied? And in between are the strategies. So does that make sense? It's just a model we've developed that has really helped us focus in on how we do strategic planning. And you used to do, when my dad was in business, you'd have 10-year strategic plans. Well, today, we have a 3-year plan, and it's rolling every year we update it because, who could have predicted COVID in February of 2019? So I go back to what I was saying a bit ago about how we develop a resilient organization. We focus on those things. Here are some strategies, but we've got to be able to change them almost overnight, depending on what happens. Okay? All of a sudden, there's tariffs coming. What's that going to do? It's going to be a different year than what we thought. We were expecting this to be a really good year. Now, we don't know. So we have to be very nimble as we go along. But I still believe in having some kind of larger plan like that. So, long-term goals, but stay focused on today. And this is how we get there. Here I'm running in Zion Canyon. Any of you been to Zion? Okay, it's just a beautiful place. There's a 48-mile run across there. This is me up here, and this is as bad as it looks. And I have a fear of heights, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. And it only gets worse when you go around this corner. But I've tried to pay attention to Matthew 6:34. Do not worry about the next step. And this is paraphrased a little. The next step will take care of itself. Each step has enough trouble of its own. So I talk to myself about that to try and stay in the moment because I really was freaking out. That was one of the worst. It's about a half a mile like that, and that was about one of the worst times in my life. Point number 3, welcome suffering in running and in business. And I say here, go to places that scare you. So here I'm on a glacier on the top of Mount Teton, or near the top of the Grand Teton. And at the ranger station, they said, don't go here. My brother's not scared of heights. And he's like, Jim, come on. If we didn't go here, we'd have to backtrack and we'd have to go 10 miles back the other way. And so he thought it was pretty funny, and he took a picture of me here, but it's about a 100-foot drop-off down here. It wouldn't have been pretty. And so this is suffering to me because I have a fear of heights. So as I said, each year we go someplace out west. And in 2011, we went to the Grand Canyon. And have any of you been to the Grand Canyon? Anybody go across the whole way and back? Anybody? Nobody's been to the north side? Okay, the north side is about this wide, about 300-foot drop off here, and I'm freaking out. So we go there, and it was sheer terror for me. And a couple years later, we're going to Zion, and my brother says, Jim, you really slow us down with this fear of height things. Can you do something about it? So I was telling a friend of mine who was a therapist about this, and she said, I can cure you of that in 2 sessions or your money back. I never heard of a money-back guarantee from a therapist, so I thought, well, I'll take her up on it. In the process of working on my fear of heights, she took me to places I'd never imagined. I thought she was just going to cure me of my fear of heights, but my fear was just a deeper manifestation of some control and anxiety issues that I have. I never considered myself a highly anxious person, but it's been transforming for me. In reducing my overall anxiety levels, the process really eliminated some of my fear of heights. Here's what she taught me about fear. Strange as it seems, she said, it's healthy to thank your body for this reaction, the fear. Your body is wise and smart and persistent. All your body is doing is sending a signal, one that gets your attention, that says, look at this, Jim. Pay attention and deal with this if you want to grow. The amount of fear you feel is excessive, which points to a displaced fear. In other words, my fear of heights is not really about heights. It's something else that is creating that fear of heights. Your body wants your health and well-being, and even though this fear doesn't look like an angelic messenger, the next time you feel the fear, thank it. Thank it for what it's revealing to you. When our attitude toward fear becomes more welcoming and inquisitive, there's a fundamental shift that occurs in us. We learn that we can connect with the freshness of the moment and relax. We are encouraged to be curious about the fear that's bound to kick in when our coping mechanism starts falling apart. So she's saying, when you fear something, thank God for that fear, because it's telling you about some work you have to do in your life. And this has been very significant for me, because it started me in a journey of examining why I'm fearful in the heights. We don't learn much in success. We learn the most by suffering and failure. So here I am in 2011 at the Grand Canyon. Look at all the space I have here, and I'm still hugging the walls. I mean, it was 48 miles back and forth of just being terrified for a lot of the miles. Here I am at Zion. Behind me is a 50-foot drop-off, and look where I'm at. And that was a result of some work I did with a therapist, which I highly recommend. All of us have issues. She said to me, Jim, you have some trauma in your life. I said, what do you mean? I've had a great life. I had great parents. I just haven't. She said, we're going to find it. And we found it. And it's been life-changing for me. And along the way, my brother appreciates that I'm not as fearful of heights. Now, I'm not completely cured. I still get a little freaked out, on some of these heights. But it has been very important for me. I said earlier, 9 out of 10 new businesses fail, or new products fail. So we want to keep trying. What is the key to success in business? So I asked a couple 30-something in Holmes County. They run a $80 million company. This is old order Amish. They run an $80 million company with their dad. And they thought and said for a moment, what is the key to their success? They said humility. Not quite the answer I was expecting. They further explained that they are willing to take chances, to run the risk of failure. When they fail, they don't get too low because they want to keep trying new things. They're a builder, one of the best builders anywhere in how they put things together. They also said when we are humble, we tend to listen better to both employees and customers. Out of this listening, they learn how to make small bets, to keep trying new things, and a few of them, become successful. So as I said, we learn the most by suffering and failure. So the key is to put ourselves in position to suffer and fail on a regular basis, right? And running's kind of done that for me. It's kind of pushed me beyond my comfort zone. It's in the suffering that we have opportunity for transformation. There's only one kind of success that really matters, and that's the success of transforming ourselves and our fears. Carolyn said something like this to me, my therapist. God wants to meet us at our fears. At our fears, he invites us to be vulnerable, as our fears tell us where we have opportunity to grow. They are full of information about the work that we need to do and are manifestations of deeper issues that are often related to trauma in our lives. As leaders, if we don't address our fears, we pass them on to the people we work with. Or we pass them on to our spouses. Or we pass them on to our children. If we don't transform our fears, we will pass them on to those closest to us, including employees and our families. I read this verse to myself every morning. This, by the way, this is me in an island called Dominica in the Caribbean. There's a 100-mile trail across there, and my brother and I ran this a number of years ago. But I love this verse. I read to myself every morning. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not reached perfection in love. Whoever fears has not reached perfection in love for themselves or in love for those closest to them. point number 4. The situation, no matter how difficult, doesn't need to be different. I just need to see it differently. So here I am a couple years ago finishing a 100-mile run at the age of 61, and you see the time there. I never imagined running 100 miles under 24 hours, especially at age 61. The story I told myself was I was too old for that. Well, what changed? What changed was all of what I thought was possible. And at mile 80, I suddenly realized that, hey, if I could put 20 good miles together here, I could break 24 hours. And I got lucky, and I did it. Even outrunning my daughter at the end, which I'll never let her forget. So, a number of years ago, I was at a week-long seminar with a leadership author that I've read a number of her books called Margaret Wheatley. And we got about 45 minutes with her by ourselves during that week. And Ann and I, my wife, were having some real struggles. And we're just very much in love with each other today, but we were struggling back then. This was about 14, 15 years ago. So I told Margaret some of this story, and I said, you know, I have this story in my head that I married the wrong person, and I can't get it out of my mind, this idea that I married the wrong person. And she looked at me and she said, well, Jim, you just need to tell a new story about your marriage. The story you're telling about your marriage is not entirely true. It comes through your mind and your ego and your fears and your failures, and you're putting a lot of that on her. But that's not a true story necessarily. So why don't you tell a story that would be more life-giving to your marriage? And I just kind of looked at her. I remember just kind of looking at her like, what? Just tell a new story? She said, well, that story's not going to be completely true either, but at least it could be life-giving and helpful to your marriage. And I thought about that for a number of months afterwards. And here's what I came to. Here's the story I started to tell. The people in our lives that are the most difficult for us, the people that agitate us the most, that we're the most frustrated by, are the teachers in our lives. And they're going to keep agitating us and frustrating us until they have taught us everything they have to teach us, until they have everything that God has for them to teach us. And that has transformed my marriage and other relationships in my lives. Ann and I are just completely opposite. My son's here tonight, and he can tell you that. We are completely opposite. And that has frustrated us. But try marrying someone that's just like you, and that's even worse, I think. There's an old adage that says, you tend to marry your opposite and you spend the rest of your life trying to get them to be like you, right? So this idea that Margaret just said, why don't you tell a different story, has changed how I think about this. Now, here I am a couple years ago finishing a 100-mile race in Alabama, which you guys were at. A couple of guys from this area ran as well. And I say it took me 88 miles to get to the fun. When I run 100 miles, I take a spreadsheet and I put a pace or an amount of time in for each mile. So 1 through 100, how many minutes per mile, how many minutes at aid stations, etc. And so I end up with a finish time, with the time I want to finish in. And it's really fun, and this has happened for me a number of times. I'll get to mile 70, let's say, right on time. And that's a real turn-on for me. I'm kind of a numbers guy, and I enjoy that. So I was running this race in Alabama. My goal time was 27 hours and 11 minutes. And I got to 88 miles, an hour behind my goal pace. It had been a struggle. The sun's coming up, and I had, a couple times during the night, I want to quit, and I'm bored, I'm tired, and then something amazing happens. And my body just comes back. Like I said earlier, the seeds of the opposite. Whatever you're feeling at the moment, the opposite's coming. And I ran those last 12 miles in a faster pace than any 12 miles before. And I ended up 3 minutes off my goal time. I ended up at 27 hours and 14 minutes. And I crossed that finish line, and you can see me smiling. I just laughed and laughed. Our bodies and minds are amazing. We limit them in so many ways. There's no reason that happens. Why would I think I can run 88 miles and then run 12? I'm not an exceptional athlete. You all could do something very similar. We just really limit ourselves. Had I dropped out at mile 88, where I felt like it, I would have missed the fun of those last 12 miles and an amazing story that I'll never forget. In business in 2008, I was still here at Birdenhand. And those of you who lived through the Great Recession know it was really difficult. We had to tell a new story about who we were at Birdenhand. So we had over 200 rooms at that point in several different hotels that we owned. And we thought we were in the lodging business. All of a sudden, the Great Recession comes, and the hotel room becomes a commodity. The internet came along. You could shop for rooms at the lowest price available. You come to Lancaster County, you could see everybody's prices. Things really changed. And so we really struggled. We lost about a third of our revenue year over year in about 3 or 4 months. Things were really, really dropping off. Most creative time in my professional career. We went from telling a story. We had to reinvent who we thought we were. We thought we were in the lodging business, and we created a new story that said we were really in the event business, to give people a reason to come to Birdenhand to experience events, and oh, by the way, they'd stay a day or two and they'd need a hotel room. You see the change in story? From a lodging story to an event story. So we created things like we added a theater. This marathon we created in 2009 was the first year of that, which is on one of the slowest weekends of the year between March and November, and now we sell out months in advance at all of our hotel properties. We created a number of major events throughout the year, holiday events, daily hot air balloons launch. We actually even created something called a banquet in a cornfield. We would have a banquet in a cornfield on Monday night, so you'd come and stay Sunday night, our slowest night of the week. We got really creative about stuff like that, and we changed who we thought we were. The situation was difficult, but we just had to change how we looked at it. We had a seeing problem. The problem itself wasn't the issue, it was how we solved the problem. And that applies to our business lives as well. This is my daughter and I at the top of a 14er in Colorado. And I think of this verse also often. From now on, we must look at nothing from the ordinary point of view. In other words, we must see it anew. If anyone is in Christ, there is a new creation. Everything old has passed away. Everything has become new. Well, my final point is, success is out there beyond our self-imposed limits. From now, here I am running 262 miles across the state of Ohio several years ago, raising money for 2 families who lost their home in a flood. 30 years ago, 59 seemed old. That's how old it was when I ran this. And it is. That's my brother Jerry. Some of you may know my brother Jerry ran some of it with me. So, I mean, it's old. And who would ever have thought, or I would never have imagined that I could run that far at my age. There's a trail that goes across Ohio from the Erie Lake to the Ohio River in Cincinnati. It's our minds that limit us in so many ways. Clearly, we do have limits, but many of our limits are self-imposed by us. We underestimate our physical and mental abilities. If we can step to the starting line of a race or a circumstance in life and say, I'm not afraid of failing. I may not succeed, but I'm willing to try. The potential is there to push far beyond what we ever thought was possible. When you take a risk, and by definition that means sometimes you will fall short of your hopes, but other times you will get an outcome that you weren't sure was possible, like running a 100-mile race. And then you stand on the other side of the finish line and you shake your head laughing and say, that was remarkable. I don't know how I just did that. It's in moments like this that I recognize my self-limiting ways. And I ask myself, what else is there in running or in life or in business that I dream about, but never attempt because I don't think it's possible? What is the next wall I can climb over? What is the next big thing I can do that yesterday I thought was impossible? Here I am crossing a glacier river around Mount Rainier. The bridge, which was just down here, was out. And my brother and I were about 25 miles in, and we had another 6, 7 to go out in the middle of nowhere, and we didn't have a choice but cross. So sometimes we take a risk and crash and burn. We try something new and fail. But those times we push through what we thought was impossible or magical and life-changing. So this is the question for me. Will I allow myself to fail often for a few special life-changing wins? So may challenge and joy and suffering and winning and failure be a part of all of your daily routines. Thanks very much for having me here, Jake. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope you picked something out of this evening that you can take along with you in business and in life.
Time for a few questions.
Sure.
Questions, anyone? Around running, business, any of it? Go ahead.
What was one of his favorite books you ever read?
Favorite books? Good
Favorite
question.
There's a book called Born to Run by Chris McDougall, who you know well. We know Chris well. Chris used to live in Lancaster County. It is a book about running, but it is a book about much more than running. It is a book about breaking through what expectations, traditional expectations are. It's a book about thinking differently. So it's called Born to Run by Chris McDougall. That is a very good book. From a business perspective, one of the best books I've read is Good to Great. Some of you, I'm sure, have read that by Jim Collins. Jim Collins discovered the number, he called it a level 5 leader, and he discovered that the top trait of a level 5 leader is humility. And that goes well with our culture, right? Although sometimes we have a false humility. If you saw it there earlier, I had Demut. Hochmut, my grandma used to always say to me, Jim, don't be too Hochmutish. Okay, that's in the back of my mind. I'm not saying that right. Hochmut. Hochmut. Hochmut is prideful. Demut, I say, is a proper humility. And that's what Collins talks about. Not belittling ourselves by being humble, but being humble enough, like those 2 Amish boys told me in Holmes County, listen to our customers, listen to our employees. And Collins, through his research, through an educational perspective, discovered that, which we all knew all along, right? And I really think that's why Lancaster County and Holmes County are so successful in business, is because so many of us are bringing humility to our work. So, good question. Thank you.
Chris?
When did you begin running?
When did I begin running? So I actually pushed him in a baby stroller way back. My son, when he was maybe 1 or 2 years old, I'd come home and he'd want to go out. But I got serious about running at 46. When I was in my late 20s, I said I want to run a marathon someday. And then my brother ran a marathon when I was 46, and I didn't want to be outdone by my younger brother. And so then I ran a marathon, and then he ran a 50-miler, and then I had to run one, and then he ran a 100-miler, and I said, well, I got to run one of those. And then I said, don't run 200-milers, because there are races that exist like that. He only has 400-milers. I have 900-milers, but who's counting? Right?
That's amazing. Other questions? Daniel?
Can you expand on life and exercise and work balance?
Life and exercise and work balance. That's very good. So we were having a conversation earlier. You know, how do I train? So when I'm running a 100-mile race, which my next one will be end of July, about a month out, I'm going to run 70 to 80 miles a week. And so, you know, how does someone who's in business, and now I don't have children at home anymore, that helps. But, you know, I say to people, what are you doing at 4 o'clock in the morning? You know, you have time to do whatever you want to do and whatever's important. And spiritual disciplines in our lives are very important. I can talk a while just about that. So daily devotions, having a spiritual director, or, you know, regular check-ins with someone who can help us with our spiritual lives, and exercise of some kind, I think, is critical. On my watch, I can record things, and I do some of my best thinking when I'm out training. And so you don't have to run ultra marathons, but I do believe walking or some kind of regular exercise is really important. So it's a matter of prioritizing our lives and what's important to us. And running And I tell my wife when I'm not able to run anymore, I'm going to be an old grouch because it's kind of my therapy. You know, when you go out for a run, you come home from work and there's a lot going on and you're frustrated by things. You go out for a 5-6 mile run, you come back and you're fine. So it's just, to me, it's just such an important part. Some kind of regular exercise is just such an important part, and so I prioritize it.
How do you answer the question, oh, but isn't it hard on your knees?
Yes, thank you for that. Actually, it builds your knees. What the research tells us is if you have a injury when you're young, like if you have a football injury, you hurt your knee or something, that will stay with you and will continue to hurt maybe as you run long distance. But running actually builds the cartilage in your knees and helps you. Now, as I get older, you know, and I get injured, I hurt my back here last fall, and I kept running, which I shouldn't have. And so I go to rehab, and I now have back exercises. I didn't used to stretch before running till about 3 or 4 years ago. I had a hip injury, and then I had a back injury. Now I have to do about a half hour stretching. So I said to my therapist, why don't you just tell me what I'm going to hurt next and start me on those exercises a while. So if you take care of your body and you don't have any kind of early injuries in your life, it really builds your legs. And these back exercises that I'm doing now, I feel better than I've felt in a long time.
Amazing.
So.
Amazing. I wouldn't doubt some people look at you and say, well, yeah, you've got a runner's body. And I don't disagree with that. But I would say perhaps you have a runner's body because you run.
That's right. I'm not athletic. I lost 20 pounds since I started running. It's not the athletic part. It's just yeah.
getting out and doing it.
Yeah.
Other questions? Right here.
That's what I just said. I told my brother, don't you run a 200-mile run. Yeah, there's some really crazy stuff out there. There's something called last man standing, which is you run 4 miles an hour until there's only one person that does a 4-mile loop. And I have a good friend out there that's done 320 miles. That's 3 days. That's over 3 days of running. And you have an hour to do 4 miles, and whatever you have left, you can sleep for maybe 5 or 10 minutes and eat. And you just keep going and going and going. No, I have no desire to run more than 100 miles. I don't plan to. He said, did you think you could learn more about yourself? That's great. You know what? Now you're going to motivate me to do that. There is learning out there. There's more learning that I'm not going to get because I'm not going to run more than 100. Yeah.
It's been a while. It's been 2014 since I ran that one with you, and I think we forget pretty easily. But it really is remarkable how terrible you can feel.
Yeah.
I mean, the picture there of you thrown up beside the trail, like that's a little bit of a glimpse. But a mile can be pretty long when you're out there and not feeling well.
Yeah.
And you mentioned about the one where you went 88 miles until you started having fun. You said the sun was starting to come up.
Yeah.
Well, that was the second sunrise you saw in that race, right?
That's right.
Most of these races start at 4 or 5 a.m.
Yeah.
So you get to see 2 sunrises unless you run it in less than 24 hours. Yeah. Which, by the way, I was sitting over here looking you up on Run Sign Up because I'm like, I wonder how many of these races you actually ran. And I saw the one that was under 24 hours, and I'm like, do I have the wrong guy here? I didn't know you did one under 24 hours. Yeah. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that was a couple of years ago. Yeah, I really want to encourage you, that idea that whatever you're experiencing now in life or in business, the opposite is coming if you're patient. I mean, I've dropped out of races where I just got too sick, or I didn't have the patience, or I just didn't feel like running anymore. And you always feel bad about that because your body will come back. And your business will come back if you stay in it, and if you develop the kind of the things I talked about at Keim, a strong balance sheet, good talent on your team, you stay innovative, you do things like that. If you're patient, I mean, I understand business failure. I've had business failures, so it happens. But in the long run, when you're in your darkest moments, if you can be patient and trust God to help you through it, you can come out the other side. And it's happened to me 5 or 6 times in running where it's just really, really bad. And that's what teaches me that good times can still come in our darkest moments.
Yeah. Question over here.
What do I take to not cramp up? I do cramp sometimes. You have to eat. You have to get about 200 calories in you an hour. So running 100 miles is often about an eating contest. The times that I have failed is usually because I can't eat. When I get out beyond 50, 60 miles, sometimes your stomach does not want to eat. And if I'm not patient, I'll drop out. If I'm patient, sometimes I sit there for an hour or two, it comes back. Sometimes when it's really hot, salt tabs help some with that. But it's just really make sure you're eating well and you're getting calories in you is what really helps. Yeah, it's crazy to think how those last 12 miles went so fast. Why didn't my legs cramp up? I don't know. I don't understand it all. But I gotten good food in me in that race. And that makes a big difference.
Your point about taking risk, I had kind of a flashback to sitting around the table there at the Bird in Hand Half Marathon, and at least a few of us in the room here can probably remember this. I mean, there was a number of things that might have came up with the race, but the one I'm thinking about was the whole T-shirt thing. That was just, it was an ongoing thing we had about. We used to just do men's or unisex T-shirts, I guess, and there was this thing about ladies' T-shirts. Most of you guys don't understand the challenges that might come with that, but I remember you saying, like, let's take the chance. Yeah. And I don't know if this was a risky endeavor or not, but for those of you that are familiar with the Bird in Hand Half Marathon, there's this little plaque that you get if you have also run the Garden Spot half marathon in the spring that has a little pile of horse poop on it. I don't know how. I wish I could remember how that topic came up as we're sitting. How did that come up?
We used to run these moonlight runs together.
Yeah.
We're running a 10-mile moonlight run.
Yeah.
And somebody just jokingly said, "Hey, why don't we put those on a trophy for the race?" We run through horse poop on the roads here. And so the next morning, I called the president of the fire company, who is a degree from Penn State in something ag-related. I said, "Hey, can you take a road apple and put that on a plaque?" He said, "Sure." He said, "You just bake it, and then you shellac it, and then you paste it on a plaque." And I got to tell you a funny story about that. In Virginia, I'm running a race one time, and the guy had a Bird in Hand Half Marathon shirt on. And so I go up, I start talking to him, and say, "Hey, I'm part of that race." He said, "Well, let me tell you this." He works in the Pentagon. He said, "I wanted to take my Road Apple Award in to show my coworkers, and the stupid thing wouldn't go through the security check." And he said, I just kept telling the guy, "This is just," excuse the language, he said, "this is just horse shit." He said, finally he let me take it in, but it kept buzzing when he put it through the conveyor belt. So anyhow, that Road Apple Award's gotten us a lot of notoriety.
Yeah, there's probably 300 or 400 of those that get given out every year. Yeah. I'm usually at the finish line as the last runners are finishing yet, and there's been a few times where somebody's coming in over 4 hours, barely being able to talk. Like, where did I pick up the Road Apple Award? And it's like, what they were thinking for the last however many miles, and you can say what you want about it, but it's a pretty unique product, and people come from miles around to collect that.
County, right?
Yep. Any other questions?
What kind of shoes do you wear out?
These are the kind I wear, and so I go through maybe 6-7 pairs a year.
6-7 pairs
they all
a
look
year.
good, but their tread's worn off the bottom, or it gets worn. Yeah. There's a great Amish shoe store in Holmes County. That's where I buy my shoes. Really, that's where I buy my shoes.
How do you create a strong, what do you call a balance sheet for an ultramarathon?
How do you create a strong balance sheet for an ultramarathon? Excellent question. So, the right amount of training, good sleep, eating well. There's a fat-burning diet. I'm not always very good at it. I do eat ice cream and stuff like that I shouldn't eat. But there was a time I didn't eat ice cream for 4 years because that's not good for you. So if you eat the right kinds of food, your body can store up fat. And actually, the old thing with races is you eat pasta before a race. That's really not good for you to eat. Pasta spikes your energy and then drops your energy. So I don't eat pasta before a race. Eating good fats and the right kinds of foods helps store up good fat in your body, and your body does much better on fat than it does from the stuff you get from the pasta. So, you know, it's just the basics. It's taking good care of your body, eating right, sleeping well, training well, and then resting. The worst part of training is 3 weeks before a race, you're supposed to really rest a lot to give your body time to recover. And that's hard to do, but you have to do it. So, yeah, good question. Good balance. I'm going to remember that. Good balance sheet for running. That's good.
Maybe one or two more questions.
Do you have any idea, you mentioned technology hasn't changed the building industry. Do you have any indication, any idea of what that might look like? Is it building with something other than wood, or do you have any indication of what that might mean?
I'm interested in wall panels and modular homes, and that's starting to happen. And if you know, one of the things that scares me now is the idea of deporting a lot of immigrant workers. Construction industry uses more of them than anybody. Construction, agriculture, and hospitality. If that happens, a lot of the subs go away, and that's going to drive, and tariffs are going to raise the price of building a house. That's going to drive changes in technology, and that's coming. There's a huge, Columbus, which is an hour and a half away from us, there's a track builder that's putting in a large factory to build homes modularly in a factory. And that's one of my concerns, is they're not going to need to buy sticks from us anymore, because they're going to be made, walls are going to be made in a factory, including electrical in the walls and plumbing in the walls. That's something I'm paying attention to. 3D printing for foundations is another thing. Now, we're not in the masonry business, but that could have a big impact on people. There are things with technology, you know, on a building site. It's not in a factory. It's not a perfect place. So there are some unique challenges there. But I think with AI and I'm concerned about wall panel building, the impact that might have.
Wouldn't the wall panels still need your materials?
Yeah, but they don't need to get them from us. I mean, they would be getting in volume from possibly direct. You see what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
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 Yep. One more all the way in the back, or maybe two more.
So, just to jump on that question, then, if you had to pivot, which is, technology is obviously going to make all businesses have to pivot. You can't do what you
Well, I'm interested in this idea.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, the question was, how would we pivot then if technology is going to come and drive that? We need to think of ourselves as being in the construction business largely, and not just in the delivering sticks business. Kind of going back to what happened at Burdenham. We're not in the lodging business. We're in an event business. So we need to rethink who we are, and still in the construction business, but not think that we're just someone who delivers sticks to job sites. So what does that mean for us? So I don't have all the answers today, but I mean, we're having this discussion because it concerns me. Yeah. Good
One
question.
final question.
So, are there other wall materials or wall panels possibly being built with other materials than wood?
Are there wall panels built with other materials other than wood? Yes, there will be. And I don't have all the answers to that. I'm not an expert on this, but there are other kind of composites and things like that are coming. I mean, I saw a video the other day, you know, this thing delivered to a job site, and within an hour or two, it's assembled. I mean, it's kind of like an erector set. You know, now these are small homes. These are multifamily small homes. Custom homes, which is mostly who we work with, custom builders, it's going to take a while longer. But I don't want to be too far out ahead, but I don't want to be behind either. So I think we still have time. I think with wall, I mean, like we have a room right now at Keim where you can walk in and see a 3D. You can walk into a room and see your house in 3D and kind of walk through your house. And that capability of the 3D design, I mean, sure, I mean, a lot of people have that capability. That's taking it from computer to 3D to building it right direct to your factory. That's where I think technology is going to start to impact us. That capability of going from a computer screen to a custom home being built in the factory, broken down into walls, taken out to the site and assembled.
That's good. Okay, how about a big hand for Jim? Thanks so much. That was great. Okay, just a few comments as we wrap up here. I had mentioned this briefly at the meeting last month, but we are doing, for the first time ever, we as the Lanchester group are putting on a Saturday workshop geared towards beginning investors, but it's open to anyone. I think anyone would get value from it, but we're gearing it towards beginning investors. That is the end of this month on a Saturday. It's March the 29th. There is a paper on the back with the QR code that you can scan if you want to register. It's $100 to register. It includes coffee, pastries, lunch, and all that. If you don't have the ability to use a QR code, there are paper registration forms that you can take and fill them out if you're interested in attending something like that. It's an all-day event at the Eden Resort. Again, Saturday, March the 29th. It's just something that we have been talking about for a while and just decided to do it just as a way to really put some effort and attention into people that are looking to get started. So we're looking forward to that. The speakers that we currently have confirmed, this is still developing, but Jeff Moeller is one of our speakers. Chris Good is planning on speaking. Nathan Rittenhouse, he's a lender that was a sponsor for us previously. Matt Byler, Investors Oasis, many of you guys know Matt. Daryl Eberly and Eli King are 6 confirmed speakers, and there'll probably be a couple other, there'll be more than that as well, but those are probably going to be our main speakers. So I've never put on an event like that before, but I think it'll be a lot of fun, and if you're interested in that, you can find the information on the table in the back. Brand new for this group, we kept getting questions about, do you guys have a way that I can call in and listen to the meetings? So thanks to Kevin Hoover and his team, as of about a month ago, they set up a hotline, whatever it is, where you can call in, listen to previous meetings. You cannot call in to listen to it live, but you can call in to listen to previous meetings. They are available, I think, currently from January 2024. I'm going to give you that phone number in just a minute here in case you want to jot it down. It is also on a paper on the table in the back. But if you call 610-200-8146 and follow the instructions, it'll basically ask you for a 4-digit code referring to the month and the year. That number again is 610-200-8146. I saw Sammy has some flyers on the table in the back. If you're interested in storage units, you can grab one of those. And I think that is going to wrap it up for tonight. So thank you for coming out. And we'll see you back here next month.